Netflix is among the companies booming during this pandemic. Many people are home, and $10 a month has opened up many kingdoms. Worlds of Tiger Kings and Last Dances, and some touristy show about the Ozarks. I admit to running down a Netflix rabbit hole or two myself. I was enthralled in the Last Dance series. A walk with Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls through that tumultuous final championship season was like reliving my childhood when MJ was king. I remember sitting in my social studies class at Macon High School the morning of the announcement of Jordan's first retirement from the NBA. And his biggest fan was a classmate of mine, and she had yet to hear the news. And so when it was said aloud in class, she halted any social study being taught by Mr. Bell. She stood up, and with a loud shriek, she began to weep. And it was dramatic, but if I'm honest, I remember the feelings. And I felt some of them again watching this series this summer. And my other Netflix rabbit hole I chased was another childhood throwback. Maybe the pandemic has made me a bit nostalgic. But I watched the entirety of the Cobra Kai series, a look at Daniel LaRusso and his karate rival Johnny Lawrence some 30-plus years after the events of the 1984 All-Valley Karate Tournament. Was it like watching a Saved by the Bell, Where Are They Now series? Absolutely. Did I love every minute? Afraid I did. They've renewed for 2 more seasons, so if you're interested in considering the theological implications of the Cobra Kai series for the world, I may or may not be willing to create such a study. Now, you've likely got some favorites too, right? My family loved Anne with an E, which is sort of a Little House on the Prairie vibed show. I see folks asking for recommendations via social media saying, hey, I've just finished this series or that series. What should I watch next? I shared earlier this summer that somebody said to me, hey, I finished Netflix. I'm like, you mean a series? Nope, I mean all of Netflix. And the watching certainly created some fleeting moments of joy or wonder or escape or adventure, to be sure. But what happens when you get to the end of Netflix? What's left? Maybe the next Netflix search is about a deeper kingdom yet. One that might seem small at first, but it's waiting to bloom into something more, something real, something transformative. And it starts with wonder, a thought, or a seed in a wide open space. Jesus was big on seeds. Talked about them often, a byproduct of an agricultural society, I suppose. I picture him walking the dirt roads with the disciples, ripping open a fresh bag of David sunflower seeds, Old Bay seasoned is my guess, chewing on them, spitting them out the shells as they walk together, especially during this stretch of Matthew's telling of the good news. Because Jesus is in the thick of it. I mean, when is he not, right? But he's teaching and he's healing and he's challenging the religious folks and the Pharisees, with their fancy degrees framed on their office walls and their cigar room discussions about bylaw item 5.427. They weren't having any of Jesus' renegade approach to religion. And they started slinging it like a bad campaign attack ad and saying everything he's doing is the devil's work. Can't trust him. And Jesus responds, a house divided crumbles. Do we know this truth, friends? This was Jesus' deal at the time. He was healing people. He was getting chastised for doing that too, helping people on the Sabbath and all. And he was teaching like nobody's business, in person, virtual, Schoology, on a boat, via goat yoga, whatever it was. He was everywhere. And he was on fire. And many a parable he offered during this stretch, stories of what the realm of God is like. How else could we actually comprehend? And so he tells stories, he gives glimpses. The kingdom, he says, is sort of like this, and it's kind of like that, and it's like baking bread, and it's like finding quarters in the couch cushions, It's like Patrick Mahomes on a 3rd and long. How else can I say this? And he looks at a handful of seeds in his hand. Seeds. Let's go with seeds. And the disciples, they lean in because they know that they get the director's cut version of every story Jesus tells. And so he says, hey, it's like a mustard seed. And they're like, okay, mustard seed, cool. Now what about the mustard seed? Calm down, Jesus says. He says it's like a mustard seed that a farmer takes out into the widest open space that she can find. She places it in a hole. She steps back. She smiles. Why is she smiling, Jesus? Because she knows. She knows something about that seed. She knows that tiny seed will grow into the grandest tree in the field, inviting every creature to enjoy it. And then Jesus quips off another parable. His storytelling has fulfilled the prophecy that said, I will open my mouth and tell stories. I will bring out into the wide open spaces things hidden since the world's first day. And here we are talking about mustard seeds in 2020. But you know what I love about that story? It's that she knows part. She knows it's a tiny seed. And it doesn't make much sense at the moment, but it's only the beginning. The greater vision is in the wide open space that she's begun to see in her own spirit. She knows. What do you know? And I mean, what do you really know, you know? Madonna named it, right? There's a spirit part of you that knows the things that are this material world can't ever know. Madonna said, I'm a material girl living in a material world, and I live in a world, right? Where I push a lawnmower to cut the growing grass as I listen to some leadership podcast. I live in a world where I have to stand in line at the DMV to get material tags to put on my license plate, nicely framed with a Catch the Broadway Spirit license plate holder. I live in a material world where I wait in line at drive-thrus and I use my time card at break time to gain rewards points. Material world. Coincidentally, can I just say that when you think, hey, I'm just going to get gas in the morning, you need to know that is like among the worst decisions you will make as an adult. I'm going to get gas in the morning just never works out. But this is the material world that we live in. But there's another world. And she knows. And you know. And it surely exists. And it's one of mustard seeds and baking bread and finding coins, and yet it's none of those things at all. It's a glimpse of the spiritual realm. It was Helen Keller who said, the most beautiful things in the world cannot be seen or touched. They must be felt with your heart. She knows. The Apostle Paul said, fix your eyes not on what is seen, but what is unseen. He knows. Jesus said, seek first my kingdom. Which is another way of saying, don't be absorbed by your material world. He knows. At the confines of the material world, in such a narrow space, give us trouble. Remember Psalm 118:5 from last week? It's still working on me. I called out to God from my narrow space, and God answered me from the expanse. She knows something about that seed. From the smallness, greatness. Now, I'm not sure if you can watch the movie The Matrix on Netflix, but it was a thinker back in the day. Morpheus is played by Lawrence Fishburne. He was sort of the God figure who caught the attention of Neo, who's played by Keanu Reeves, who was coincidentally Ted from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, or this year's version, Bill and Ted Face the Music, neither of which won an Oscar. But Neo ends up in this unfamiliar space with Morpheus, and it's quite the serious talk. And Morpheus says, feel a bit like Alice tumbling down the rabbit hole? You could say that, Neo says. Well, let me tell you why you're here, Neo. You're here because you know something. And what you know, you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. And you don't know what it is, but it's there like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It's what she knows about the mustard seed, right? It's what Neo knows about this world. There's something bigger brewing. There's a wider space that we haven't yet explored. Do you have this ache? It's like a splinter in your soul. You know something. It's like a piece that you can't quite find, or a truth that you can't quite crack, or an accepting love that has eluded your heart to this point in life. And you've sought it in the material world. We all have in some ways, but it's not findable on Amazon. But you want to see it. And we long to see, to know. And that's why we're here now, right? Partly tradition, I suppose, partly habit or obligation or just the precursor to your favorite Sunday dinner, but somewhere in the depths of who we are, there's a splinter in your mind and your soul today. And you're seeking to know, and so am I. Neo asks Morpheus, "Why do my eyes hurt?" And Morpheus says, "You never used them before." Neo, sooner or later, you're going to realize, just as I did, that there's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path. And what if we could see? That's why Jesus had a parable for every material object, something that we could see in hopes of seeing what we cannot see. Much of the time, however, we forget to look around. How lucky are we to be alive right now, right? Much of the time, we don't even know that we're lost. Got a good chuckle out of a news story. I saw it for the first time this week, even though it happened a few years back. Talk about not knowing you're lost. The headline read, "Missing Woman Mystery Solved." And this is how it was told. A group of tourists spent hours Saturday night looking for a missing woman near Iceland's Elja Canyon, only to find her among the search party. The group was traveling through Iceland on a tour bus and stopped near a volcanic canyon, and soon there was word of a missing passenger. The woman, who had changed clothes, didn't recognize the description of herself, so she joined in the search. But the search was called off at about 3 a.m., when it became clear the missing woman was, in fact, accounted for and searching for herself. Isn't that awesome? I mean, not for the woman, right? Not at the time, not for the many who were up until 3 a.m. searching, but in hindsight. And we all know that hindsight is 2020. Takes on a new meaning these days. But that line, the search was called off when the missing woman was accounted for and realized she was searching for herself. And we get it, right? I mean, it's hard to go into the wide open space of this world looking for the tree in the open field when it's still a seed in the ground. It's hard to see. When your life can be what it can be yet, when you're bogged down in the mire of the moment. It's hard to find ourselves when we don't even realize that we are the ones being sought. It's hard to see the kingdom of God that Jesus promised is right here, right now, among us, when it seems that everything is falling apart. But that's the pesky splinter in the mind, right? In the soul. It's the thing that knows. She knows the seed's potential. You know that something's not yet right or complete or whole. And so here we are wondering with us collectively what all of this mess of life can mean. Paul called this splinter a thorn. So much speculation about the thorn in the side of the Apostle Paul. Don't you think he said it like that? Like the Ohio State University. The Apostle Paul had a thorn in his side. And it plagued him throughout his life. And we're talking about a guy who had been snake bitten and shipwrecked and beaten mercilessly and imprisoned and more. He's got a thorn that he says, I prayed 3 times for God to remove it from me. We're not talking about a throw-in prayer request on a random Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday one week in the summer. It's not a, by the way, God, that thorn is a bit of a bother. Could you tweeze it out for me? No, I imagine 3 very painful seasons in Paul's life of pleading. If you've been through this yourself, if you've loved anyone who has, you understand these long seasons of pleading. God, I'm not sure that I can keep doing this ministry stuff. I'm not sure that I've got the energy to do what is needed. I'm not sure that I can keep going in the face of adversity and the hatred and the mockery with this thorn. And you've been there. You may be there now. We're pretty much there as a society. And you lean back in your chair there on the couch or wherever you may be, looking at your handful of mustard seeds, and you're like, it ain't happening. Can't see it, can't be it. But in spite of the seeming impossibility, that farmer, she knows. She knows about the seed. Paul knows the thorn won't win. And you know it too. If there's a gift of this season, that may be it. That we're in a mustard seed season. We're watching this from home, or you're out sitting on the lawn. We've cut through much of the allure of the material world these days. Some say those are just distractions from the seed work that needed to happen inside of us, perhaps. A minister friend of mine offered such a seed opportunity to the church right now. Church, he said, don't be overly hooked by the big show. I love aesthetics too. I appreciate good music, beautiful lights, and well-placed props. But at the end of the day, if we are the body of Christ, we're following a single man from Nazareth with dirty feet, blood-stained hands, who invites us to a simple meal. And while we're longing for the old days, Jesus is popping in another mouthful of seeds and pointing to that wide open space, saying, over there, it's rising, even if you can't see it just yet. Don't go back to what was, but press forward into who we can become. And what does this mean for us, Broadway? I think it means we scatter some new seed and we keep growing. Patient waiting is a virtue. It's often called for. And yet, if the seed never makes it from our pocket to the ground, it's not going to grow at all. Bob Goff says it like this. I've met a lot of people who say they're waiting for God to give them a plan for their lives. And they talk about this plan like it's a treasure map folded up in God's back pocket. Only pirates have those, he says. People who want a reason to delay often wait for plans. And when we're in such a spirit, we just start another series on Netflix. We run down another rabbit hole or two while we wait. But then Bob says, people who are becoming love don't do that. And becoming love is the primary call of Jesus. People who are becoming love, they have a splinter in their soul that knows something's brewing and growing, and we can be a part of it now. It's not a mustard seed one moment and spread on your brat the next, but the ache that you have will help you know if you're working toward the ultimate knowing or not. I've spun plenty of wheel that I knew that my heart wasn't propelling the movement toward the towering tree that was envisioned. And if you've ever put in the time out of duty and not passion, you know this stalling. Or if you're tired of faking it, you're then finally in a position to grow. God is more interested in our growth than us looking like a finished product. And so what is it that you know in your heart right now? What do you know about the mustard seeds in your life? What are you planting right now that you're fully committed to? And you may not see it all yet, right? It may just be an email in the inbox. Or maybe an investment that you're making in a child. It may be that the tree that your planted seed is yet to bring the shade, but someday you can see it. You can see it even now. You can walk along your current path with Jesus, chewing seeds, seeing that, yeah, she knows. That splinter in your soul is pointing you to the deeper seeking that has you braving the next steps. And you know that you know that you know that God is going to work some growth into your life through this seed. And I trust it. I'm in it with you. And when you come to the end of Netflix, there is something more. And friends, this is a season of mustard seed. This is the season to know it and to trust it and to grow it, to become it. And God will walk with us. Jesus says it's like a seed planted in the wide open space, stepping back and smiling because she knows, he knows, you know, and God knows the best is yet to come. Thanks be to God.